everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Purpose and Profit Sisterhood. I am here today with the fabulous Kara Stefani Barnes. Did I pronounce it right?
Yep, perfect.
Stefani or Stephanie?
Stefani like Gwen. Yep.
Barnes. All right. And we're going to be talking about the operational side of your business, which is something that we don't actually spend much time on here. And we need to, because it's equally as important as the sales and marketing side. No point in selling things if you can't deliver them. So I'm glad you're here. Thank you. And where are you joining us from?
I am currently in Boise, Idaho.
Oh, okay, awesome. I've driven through Boise many times on my way somewhere warm and in the south.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Coming from Calgary, Alberta, so
Okay.
heading to Phoenix or across to Florida. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about Kara. Over the past decade, Kara Barnes has played a pivotal role in helping million-dollar speakers elevate their businesses by serving as their trusted second in command, expertly optimizing day-to-day operations and ensuring the seamless execution of their visionary strategies. Oh my goodness. My shoulders just went down. I went, oh, I need a second in command so bad. Um, I had a really good one, but he got too busy and away he went. And oh yeah, it makes such a difference. All right. So welcome and thank you for that intro. But now we want to find out the real juicy bits. So tell us something about you that no one would guess by reading your website or your bio or anything like that. What's something that they would be surprised by?
So the first thing that comes to mind is that for being an operations person, I don't love tech that much. I don't love automations that much. I love organization and sort of the brain hacking part of it that makes the people plug into it effectively, right? It doesn't matter if you have 15 automated tasks set up, if they pile up and you end up with 15 red due dates and no one's doing them. So I think that's something that people are always surprised when I'm not coming in and building automations left and right and making everything as fancy and teched up. I sort of start with like what's realistic for getting team members to do the things you need them to do. So that's something that's I think a little counterintuitive for people when they start working with me.
All right. And so tell us what your journey has been. How did you get to this business?
Yeah. So I worked in online business spaces through college. So I worked through a virtual assistant firm and became their marketing specialist over time. I really enjoyed that, but then there wasn't a lot of upward mobility in a virtual assistant firm. So I started an agency with a friend of mine a year out of college and learned a ton really quickly, good and bad, and everything in between. And what I found was that I didn't actually enjoy the marketing so much. I enjoy the operations around it. Marketing requires a lot of structure and a lot of clarity. How do we do the same thing over and over again and then make it even better and have it be consistent, plug someone else into that system. There's a lot of that in marketing. So we had that agency for 3 or 4 years or so. And then my partnership with my co-founder fell apart and it was kind of a nasty breakup and I got locked out of all the company accounts very abruptly and it was really painful. He's a family member. It was a lot of heartbreak
Yeah.
and more lessons, good things to be reflecting on and figure out like where do I need to have ownership and what I didn't do right and that experience really set me on a path to figure out how to make sure that people have effective visionary integrator relationships. And so when you ask kind of where did I come from? How did I get into this work? I feel really passionately about helping people find a solid second command that fits their personality, that fits their philosophy of what they want to build in their business. And then I think the other flavor that I bring into the mix is that I really want people to be able to be their authentic selves in their business. That sounds kind of buzzword cliche, but I think there's something interesting there about helping someone be, again, realistic about how their brain works, how they want to show up in their business, what they like doing, what they're drawn to do, what motivates them, and balancing that with good business practice, right? So instead of saying, you got to stop having so many ideas and you're throwing your team all over the place, how do we take all the good parts that you bring to the table and plug it into a business that will work around you so that we get the good parts of you without watering it down so you can be a good little business person. So I like those two things, really letting people be authentic and real. Let's build a business around you. And then fit in that second command piece that I think is really hard to find. You mentioned, all the things that have to fall into place to make that relationship work. It's a lot of work.
It is. It really is. And so what kind of led you to want to do this kind of work? What's your why or purpose in life? Because I get that, on you like that side of work and that's what you got into. By the way, do you like have Christmas dinners and stuff with that family member? Are they still around?
No, no, and we have been around each other enough that it's kind of dissipated. It's been, I don't know, 10 years or something now. Um, and we still, when all of that is sort of set aside and we're just in a family situation, we're able to still laugh and we kind of like jump back in and are able to banter the way we did before because we were really good friends, so I'm grateful for some of that, but we haven't had a conversation about it yet. I'm kind of waiting for some of that to resolve. But I mean, to that point, I think in small business, I'll answer your question. It's so personal, right? Like whether you're family or not, like you become really good friends with the people that you work with day in, day out. And especially when you're an entrepreneur and people are bought into your mission, there's a lot of emotion around it. So I'm optimistic that relationship will fully heal. But I think in terms of my why, I want people to find work that they love doing and find people that they love doing it with and not feel like they have to sacrifice a lot. I see a lot of entrepreneurs in hustle mode where they are really grinding and they're exhausted and they're burning out and they're not really enjoying what they're doing, and it creates these really high highs and really low lows, um, and then I see them slowly, their LinkedIn pops up that they're kind of back as an employee and then back into corporate, or like it doesn't last, and that really makes me sad. So my why is to help people continue to be able to have a sustainable income source and have enough strong business savvy and practices in place that they can continue doing the thing that really lights them up. Because I think that quote that says, the world needs more people doing what lights them up, and that, we don't need more people doing the status quo. We need whatever your specific light is. I really feel strongly about that. And I think entrepreneurship is one of the cooler ways to do that. If you can make your 40 hours a week be something that lights you up, my gosh, do that. Let's figure out how to make that work for you.
Right. I love that. So what I hear in that why is that what you're really after is getting more lit up people around the planet.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. And more people, I mean, I had a friend this weekend ranting at me about capitalism, and I'm like, I get it, man. Like, it's rough out there, but I think, I'm like, let's be honest about the system that we're in. If you need to make an income and you've got a lifestyle to maintain, you've got a certain mark you want to meet, why not do that doing something that you love and do it like something that really shows your gifts?
Mhm.
And yeah, less people on this planet feeling like I got to put in my 40 hours and then I can live in the evenings and weekends. That's not a compelling, reason for
Right.
me.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
and then they don't live in the evenings and weekends because they're usually too exhausted and bummed out and depressed from the time that they've been at work. So they tend not to enjoy the rest of the time anyway. Um,
yeah,
so the operational side of things, that's often a thing that a lot of entrepreneurs don't want to deal with. That and bookkeeping tends to be the two, and technology, the areas that are the most daunting for a lot of entrepreneurs, because most of them come up through the technician side of things. They are the cabinet builder that makes cabinets, or the massage therapist who likes hands-on, or the coach who loves to work with people. They don't
yeah.
necessarily want to be doing spreadsheets. So how do we shift let's start with the big picture. How do people need to think about operations so that it doesn't become this dreaded should and have to?
Yeah, great question. Um, and there's no magic pill to not make it a have to. I will tell you, it takes a while to appreciate. Um, I think bottom line, the importance of operations and the reason that it's critical to lean into it as an entrepreneur is that it will allow you to prioritize effectively. And it's not a matter of getting all the things done in your day. It's a matter of getting the right things done in your day, right? And when you operationalize and you're able to see realistically, here's the things that I need to complete today. You can start from that comprehensive list and choose the things that really require your attention to move the biggest needle forward, instead of I don't know, I've got these 15 Post-its, I want to get through them all, whatever they are, right? And there's some important things and some like frilly things and some things you don't even remember why that's there. And so the more that you can get yourself to be organized and intentional about the way that you approach your work and how you show up in your workday and move through one thing at a time, that's the natural consequence, is that it forces you to make those priority decisions over and over. One of the things that I'm often helping speakers with is implementing a project management tool. So Asana is the tool of choice I use, but we've helped people with Trello or Monday or ClickUp, all of those. And someone said to me recently, she said, I feel like all I do now is move my due dates around. She's like, am I doing this right? I don't feel like I'm saving time yet. When do I start saving time? And I said, well, I hear you. And also the fact that you are moving due dates around all the time means that you're prioritizing in a way that you probably never have before. And it takes some getting used to. To be honest, it can be less satisfying at first. You kind of have to grit through and get used to being honest with yourself about what's the best use of my time and how do I stay committed to it and disciplined, because it's a lot of not very sexy little tedious things that you got to do day in, day out. So I think that that's one of the things that I see that start to motivate people, like, wow, I really was able to achieve these things in a quarter that I have been working on for years. And I've never just like put the last little touch on it. We really got through it. So in some ways you have to get away from the quick wins. Like, if, instead of your goal being to clear your email for that day, your goal becomes, did I really meet this mark for this quarterly goal that I had set for myself to really move my business forward, to really stay focused and narrow on what I'm achieving? So I know that's a little theoretical, but I'll say, I think I really love helping people understand, how do I take the bigger picture of operationalizing and getting clear on some quarterly goals and then get it down to my day-to-day, and so some of that includes a project management tool, like I'll say, and then some of it includes like a dashboard of what do I need to do in the next week to move the needle towards that big quarterly goal. So that's sort of how I approach operations in businesses, helping them get clear on big picture, where are we headed, so that we can make sure the day-to-day matches those efforts. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Ish,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's a big question, so there's a lot of different aspects to it. So yes, absolutely. So you mentioned visionaries and integrators, which is language from that I heard in Rocket Fuel, the book Rocket Fuel. Is that what you were kind of referencing? And it sounds like you're really talking about, when you're talking about a number one and a number two, often businesses are started by visionaries who suck at implementation, consistency,
Yeah.
and operations and systems, and so
Yeah.
forth. I am one of those people. However, I have learned to be a number two and have been a number two a number of years. So therefore I've learned the pieces of integration and creating systems and so forth. But my favorite thing is to create systems for other people and not have to use them myself, being the quintessential visionary. So how do people know which one they are? How do they know the visionary or the integrator?
Yep, love it. So there's actually a tool online that's the quick, easy answer, is that there's if you Google rocket fuel crystallizer, there's an assessment that comes up that will give you an integrator and visionary score. And that can kind of, if you really aren't sure and you might be a little bit of both, you can go try that out, and it's an excellent tool. But I can also give a quick summary. So the visionary is responsible for generating new ideas. They're responsible for knowing the market trends. They're responsible for big relationships and closing big deals. They're typically the one who, like you said, is passionate about the mission itself. So like, what's the impact that we're trying to have and how are we trying to do it? They're very excited about all of that. And as a result, they are the one who casts the vision. Here's how we're going to go about it, right? The integrator is the one who takes the vision and is responsible for implementation. The integrator makes sure that we've got the right seats in place for knowing the market. The integrator makes sure that seats. Oh, there we go.
Oops, sorry. I'm there. Okay. I'm just trying to post something in the Facebook. I'm trying to put the link of the assessment into the group, and you came up over on my other screen.
I'm everywhere. Well, yeah, I'll just say that the integrator is really responsible for making that vision come to life. So that includes making sure that we've got clarity about what the seats are that need to be in place, and the timing of it. At what point are you ready to bring on an accountant and a graphic designer, and what's the correct, sensible investment there? And then making sure we've got the right personnel in those seats is a big one. And then at the end of the day, oftentimes a visionary and integrator, they're coming to a problem from two different sides of things. The integrator in a small business is often forcing strategic conversation, right? So the visionaries why might be because that's what people are talking about right now. That's the exciting thing, or that's the thing that I think makes sense because I see other people doing it. And the integrator is the one to ask the hard questions about like, okay, well, how is that going to affect this existing strategy? And how, like, what does that mean about this person's role? Or how are we going to, like, who's going to take this on, right? And if we're going to take this on, what are we taking off our plate? So they help make sure that things are realistic execution and that things don't just get done, but they get done well and in a strategic way. So I see a lot of people bringing on a second command for the first time who they're not used to running something by someone. They're not used to having someone poke and challenge and really think through the implementation and critically think through the implementation of something. And that takes some getting used to. So I'll say, quick plug that's kind of what my services are about, are helping people with that transition away from solopreneur hustle thinking to, okay, I got to function a little bit more as a team now. I have to function as a small business now and really be more strategic, and because it affects someone else and someone else is going to be there watching to see, am I honoring the things I'm committed to? So yeah.
So, so how do people pick a good second in command if they are? So I'm assuming that you're advocating that if you're the visionary, get an integrator. If you're an integrator, you may need a visionary to kind of pull in the big picture perspective and help build that. In the E-Myth, he talks about the three legs of the stool: the operational person, the technician, the person who does the work, and the visionary. And I think that makes a lot of sense because one or the other has to be the deliverer of the product. So whether it's E-Myth or Rocket Fuel that you're looking at and listening to, you still need to figure out how to get all of those different roles handled. How do you find a good opposite that, because one of the challenges is they're an opposite. They're not like us, and we tend to like people who are like us. And so how do you find a good number two?
Yeah. Yeah. So, excellent question. And it's a hard one. I think, my immediate answer is, regardless of how you go about the recruitment process, and, I can speak a little bit more to that, but regardless of all of that, I think having a strong precedent of honest communication, and from the very beginning being able to say, how do I be the best person you've ever worked with, and what drives you crazy about, past people that you've worked with, and having, like, we call it designing an alliance. So that's the very first conversation we have, is we go through a long list of questions of that nature that say, I want you to be really honest with me about, like, how does it look when you're feeling frustrated, or, do you tend to shut down, or do you tend to get flustered, or, what does that look like when it's not going well, and how can I show up in that moment? How can I support you in that moment? So, I mean, just the way you would design a romantic relationship, or, a friendship, you got to be able to have really vulnerable conversations about, like, here's my weak spots, and here's how I would love for you to support me in those moments. So that's a big one. I think when it comes to recruitment, I can speak a little bit to that, like in my agency, I'm often pairing people with that second command, for their business. And we do a couple of things. We'll have folks take that crystallizer assessment. And we often look at the results and sort of see, where are we both weak? Like, what are the weak spots that we've both got, where we're going to have a conscious discussion about, or conscious decision about who's going to take that on if neither of us are prone to step in and do that thing. So there's so many assessment tools out there. Having a little bit of time and energy at the beginning of the relationship to say, let's figure out what our strengths really are. How do we complement each other, and what roadblocks are we likely to come up against, so that it's not a surprise, right? Like, sort of embracing that, like, if this is going well, we're going to have some bumpy points. That's a good sign. That means we're both being honest and showing up and trying to advocate for the business. So knowing all of that, discussing it. I mean, I think just the fact you've read Rocket Fuel is huge, and sort of arming yourself with some information about what to expect, I think, allows you to not be quite so emotionally loaded when those things are actually playing out.
So let's talk briefly about, and by the way, I love the phrase designing an alliance. I think that's a brilliant way to frame that. So Pamela just asked, as a solopreneur, I assume that I am all of the roles for now. Any advice for that stage? Great question,
Mhm.
Pamela.
It is a great question. Yeah. Um, Yeah. So, I mean, I think I've seen people in a solopreneur position who didn't even necessarily want to take on a second command, read some of this literature and do some research about what would I want from the second command, literally so they can be more mindful about what hat they're wearing, which I thought was an interesting exercise, right? And sort of giving themselves permission to say, okay, if I brainstorm in a different part of my brain than I'm analyzing ideas on, how do I make sure that I'm picking one hat at a time? And maybe I go to a conference with my visionary hat on, and I'm just there to learn and absorb and get excited about relationships and ideas in the market. And then when I come back, I'm going to sit down and open up a spreadsheet and put on my integrator hat and keep myself from going down a rabbit hole of a fun research project. I'm going to stay narrow. Which of those 17 ideas that I came back from the conference with, which one do I want to implement, and what's that going to look like? And be intentional and disciplined about keeping the correct hat on at a time. Same with, and I guess part of the reason the literature I think is helpful is because it also helps you notice when you're naturally falling into one of those roles, right? So for visionaries, one of the things that they will do is called, visionary whiplash, where they might come back from a conference. It's a good example. And they come back with ideas and their team is going, oh my gosh, we're throwing everything out and we're starting over and we're doing. So noticing your own tendencies, you kind of gives you some language and some framework to be able to say, oh, I'm being a little bit of a visionary. Let me check in and see if that's the right thing right now. Like, is now the right time for this conversation, or is it, the right time to introduce this? So yeah, that's my 2 cents for the solopreneurs.
I think that's awesome. And Pamela said one hat at a time. Brilliant. And really part of what you can actually do, right? Take that to the extreme and play the role. So imagine you are someone that you know that is the type of integrator that you would want to be, or the type of visionary you would want to be. And imagine having a conversation with them, have the conversation on paper, have that other persona outside of you, so that you can engage with it as well. And let's talk a little bit about recruitment briefly, because we got to wrap up soon. But one of the big challenges is a lot of people hire a team or hire a VA or hire some subcontractors. And I call it, and I've done this numerous times, which is abdicate versus delegate. And hire people for specific skills rather than for the role. So can you speak to either of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say, I'll give you some considerations, and if you want me to more narrowly answer your question, you poke at me. But I think one of the conversations I'm having with folks a lot is, do you need a project manager who's coming in to execute and manage execution? Do you need a strategic partner who's coming in to poke and challenge? And are you ready for that level of support in your business? Or do you need someone to execute well? And it's a matter of, quality execution. I had this conversation in the last week with a client that they know they need somebody in there. They know they need more hands on deck, but they can't answer that question yet. And I've had to continue sort of bringing that back to the forefront. Like, okay, before we talk about, Ashley, this person you met over here who might be really a good fit, or this, your aunt knows how to do this or that. Let's set that aside for a minute, because you're right. I think it is hard to not get excited about the people that who might be a fit. First, define that seat. What do we really need from this role? And then be able to speak to that for that person so that they know what to expect, right? You don't want to pay someone for strategic thinking if you're really just going to be bossing them around and not really wanting their input and asking them to just execute. I don't really want, I'm not looking for more inputs. And that's fair. You might just need someone to execute. If you know that your business is at a level where you need that strategic partner, then you're going to need to expect to pay a little bit more, right? Be realistic with yourself about what you're asking for in that role. I see that as a common problem, that virtual assistants are often asked to be business managers. And so being aware of, am I asking this person to execute, or am I asking them to manage a project? And know that those are completely different skills. And maybe even with the hats again, maybe ask them to be mindful of what, help them hold you accountable. What hat am I asking you to wear? And if I'm asking too much of you, please let me know, because it's better to invite that conversation than have somebody quietly quit on you because they're overwhelmed, or they're asking, they're spread in too many directions and they're not being effective. So let me pause for a second and see if
I think that's great information, and it's very true that a lot of times people will put people in a position, and because they might be competent or they show some skills in that area, start to expect more of them and ask more of them than may be possible. And conversely, I've hired OBMs, online business managers, expecting them to be a strategic sounding board and to manage team and so forth, only to have them not pick up the mantle because they were intimidated or didn't feel like comfortable to step into that role. And so then when they didn't, of course, I started picking up the slack, which then further help them not pick up the slack and not do the role. So really have to be clear on where your job ends and theirs starts. So yeah, let's tell people a little bit about how they can find you. So
Sure. Yeah. So my website is backstageops.com. If you're interested in hopping on a call and learning a little bit more about second command services and operations and how that might look in your business, you can schedule a call with me through the website. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm Kara. I suppose my name will be on Facebook, but Stefani, Stefani Barnes. And yeah, just reach out to me there, and I'd love to connect. It's fun for me to see all the different ways that people go about designing operations. And so every once in a while, someone books a call just to sort of brag and say, look at all the things I built. What would you do differently? And I'm happy to have that conversation. I can nerd out about operations all day. So yeah, in
I love
touch.
that. And you want to find someone who's really passionate about that, about the nerdy, someone who wants to nerd out about operations, because the more people love what they do, the more they do, the more likely they will do it well and
Yeah.
for a long time. And so rather than trying to put that square peg into a round hole, which I have done numerous times with various VAs, and other subcontractors, it's better to find someone who loves doing what they're doing, hire them at the appropriate level, pay the appropriate amount, and get the appropriate services. You're not guaranteed to. You still have to test people. You still have to make sure there is you still have to design the alliance. Sorry, really love that phrase. And make sure that that is the right fit, because not everyone's a fit. So it is a case of dating until you find the person you want to marry. And so you might not find that person on the first date. What's one last piece of advice you'd like to leave everyone with, Kara?
Um, I think I would just offer that if you're interested in doing more, if you're interested in having a second command in your business, one of the things that you probably need is enough operational infrastructure to really set that person up for success. So, same way I'm saying, invite conversation about designing that alliance, invite conversation about what that person needs to be successful. And do you have enough infrastructure in place? Do you have a CRM? Do you have a project management tool? Are you mindful of how you do email? Are some of those things strong, so that when you bring someone in, you can actually leverage their talent and get the most out of what they're bringing to the table? That's, when it comes to having that second command relationship work and the readiness factor, there's a lot that you can do to lay a good foundation so that when someone comes in, you can plug them right into a system.
Awesome. Yep, that makes a whole lot of sense. And so give everyone your website one more time.
BackstageOps.com.
.com. All right, awesome. And a nice spotlight awaits and a nice microphone.
Yep.
And really, truly, you do want to have someone that has your back and that can support you. And you need to really ask yourself, are you willing to ask for and receive support? Many entrepreneurs will hire people and ask for the support, but then they won't let it make a difference to them. They can't receive it. So it's not just a question of opening your arms, it's allowing yourself to receive the support as well. And if you're
Yeah.
not at that stage, be honest with yourself, save a lot of time and effort and money until you get to a point where you're willing to let others support you. And they may not always do exactly what you would do or the way you would do it. And that's probably a really good thing. Thank you so much for being here, Karen. Thank you for being one of those supporters that is in the backstage, in the background. Often don't get enough credit for the difference that you make, and people like you that are the supporters in the background, the difference that you make. But it's so, so valuable, such valuable work. So please do reach out to Kara if you're at a stage where you think, I'm ready to call in support and let it make a difference to me. It's probably really wise to start with someone who is not doesn't need your hand holding, but will hold your hand. That's probably a good place to start.
Well
Awesome.
said.
Thank you for being here, Kara. Have a wonderful day and a bodacious week, everyone. And go and apply at least one thing that you heard here. If you reach out to Kara and book a call with her. And if you are looking for team members, I wrote a little ebook on some of the mistakes that people make when they're looking for team members. I'm going to put that ebook into the chat and into our show notes so that you can grab it for free. So please do and go and grab that, because I have spent a lot of time, money, and effort on building team and done a lot of things wrong. So I teach you all the things not to do, which will help you, because then hopefully more of the things you do will be the things that do work. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your passion, and have a bodacious week, everybody. Bye-bye.